Hi everybody, welcome. Caroline Best of the Tao of Horsemanship. You all know who this is. This is my buddy Zor. So today we are going to do a lesson, a video about, not necessarily on, but about the very widely used and abused and misunderstood concepts of pressure and release. So I'm going to talk about how I use pressure and release and what I believe it's meant for and how it should be used, and also talk about how often it's used the wrong way. And then we're going to show you some examples both in groundwork and in riding about pressure and release. So this was brought to my attention by a student of mine recently. I mean, it's always brought to my attention, especially with my YouTube videos with some of the comments and questions. But more recently, it was so well articulated by one of my students that it really got me thinking about this more deeply and in a way that I feel I can articulate a lot more clearly, especially differentiating between common traditional uses of pressure and release, conventional, and pressure and release is used in every discipline in all of horsemanship. So it's not just a natural or general horsemanship concept. It's used everywhere. And I believe it's really important for people, whether you're working on the ground or riding, to really understand the purpose of pressure and release. And most importantly, understand the difference of pressure and release. And I'll explain more. So most commonly, pressure and release is a tactic used most commonly to teach, so they say, to teach the horse. So you add pressure on the horse to help to motivate them to teach. Now this was taught to me through one of the most widely acclaimed, recognized natural horsemanship clinicians in the world, Pirelli. And they taught Pat Pirelli that pressure, the purpose of pressure, is to motivate the horse to try. So the purpose of pressure, once you apply pressure in whatever form it is, and we're going to talk about the various forms, it is to help motivate the horse to try. Try what though? Try to figure out what you want. And when they do try, however that try shows up, you are supposed to give them the release. So basically, while that may be true on a very rudimentary, basic level in horsemanship, it doesn't mean that that is the only way that you work with horses or you teach horses. It does not. And let me explain why. You will never have a safe horse if everything you do is technical and mechanical. And the basic principles of pressure and release, like I just talked about, through natural horsemanship, do not teach your horse to, one, develop their brain, their left side of their brain. Does not teach them to think at all. It does not help to develop, two, a deeper connection with your horse. What does connection mean and how does it show up? That's very important. And three, it does not develop a safe horse. So in my work, in my method, in my teaching, in my development of horses, in order to be completely safe with your horse, train and ride in a rope halter and in a bareback pad and not use a helmet does not mean that I am cocky or risky at all. I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't trust my horse and my horse did not prove to me that they're trustworthy. But in order to get to that point, to ride like that in all of your riding, anywhere and everywhere, no matter what you do, in order to get like that, you've got to have a thinking horse and you've got to have connection. And connection in my work is all about the relationship and how it shows up. Like right now, I didn't teach this. I didn't make this happen. This didn't happen because of pressure and release. I didn't make him do this. Connection shows up when you seek each other out for various reasons. Most of all, because you enjoy each other, you love each other, you have a deep and rewarding friendship and relationship. But you seek each other out because you care about each other. You care. When you look up the definition of connection, look it up. What I can't stand, and why I'm so grateful that my student brought this up to me so I could do a video on this, is that it's purported, the propaganda out there by so many leading equine professionals, the propaganda, the myth, the bullshit is, we're going to teach you pressure and release tactics with your horse, and that's how you'll get them connected to you. What the hell does that mean? And how does that show up? How does that connection show up? By the horse paying attention to you? That's what you're led to believe. As soon as that horse focuses on you and pays attention to you, you've got connection. No, you don't. Maybe mentally you have a level of connection because the horse is focused on you. They're paying attention to you. But you don't have the deeper levels of connection that keep you safe. When that horse thinks about you, cares about you, considers you, and when shit hits the fan and they don't feel safe, you have a strong enough bond and relationship. You've proven to your horse that they are safe enough with you, that they check back in with you and go, am I safe right now? Because the opposite of that is them going into self-preservation mode, fight, flight, or freeze. And that's when they take care of themselves. And instinctually, that is how the horse is hardwired. That's the right side of their brain. So while we're talking about pressure and release, we're also talking about connection. And connection in my work and what I teach you and what I develop in the horse is that, one, you've got to develop that left brain. So the horse is thinking, not reacting. So we have two hemispheres to our brain, two sides of our brain, horses and people. And horses are instinctually living in their intuitive, their right brain, their sensory aware and sensory processing. That's how they get feedback and information about their surroundings, and it comes through their nervous system. And it's instinctual, the decisions that they make. But when we can develop the left brain so that it's stronger and they're thinking more, they become responsive. And combine that with a phenomenal relationship, a relationship where true connection happens, then anything and everything is possible, including being completely safe with your horse. So how do we get to that? I've got quite a few videos on my YouTube channel, and especially in my courses I teach you, and also in my library. Full-length training videos about connection, and I talk about the process of developing it. But really I want to get back to the topic of pressure and release, because it is so, again, overused, misunderstood, and abused in horse training from the ground to riding. Now, when my student, who's a new member of mine on my Mastery membership program, it was an excellent question. I thanked her so much for it, because it gave me the ability to, as I'm doing right now, really break down what's going on out there and how wrong it is and why it doesn't work, and how you need to think about the tactics or the strategy of using pressure and release. And so pressure and release predominantly across all horsemanship, all disciplines, is used to make the horse submissive. It really is a general way of saying, I'm gonna come in and work with this horse, and it's gonna be dominance force training, because you really are dominating the horse. You're moving the horse around, or if you're riding, you're putting so much pressure on the horse, you're overfacing them or overwhelming them. And it's a lot more dangerous when you're on them, because if they do go into fight or flight, it's really hard to stay safe, and we know that. So a lot of people won't push those buttons when they ride, but we still see it. We see it with people who have too much contact with the reins and a bit in the horse's mouth, and the horse is really bent into a frame, a superficial frame. We see it by kicking the horse all the time and pulling on their mouth and yanking on them, and at all different levels. It doesn't have to be abusive, so to speak. It's not like we are purposely hurting the horse. It happens in all disciplines and at all levels of riding. People are just not aware that when they're kicking their horse with or without spurs, or they're hitting them to go with the crop, or they're yanking on their mouth, that it is a level of abuse and force. And it doesn't have to be that way. So just in those simplified examples, there's pressure. And then if we're taught, well, release when they do the right thing. So you're not really teaching the horse anything but to look for the release. And a lot of times, what you teach is a horse to become, to avoid you. Avoid you in many situations. Avoid coming to you, which creates the catching issue, so to speak. I hate the word catching. The horse avoids contact by basically not being on the bit, so to speak, or vertical, but behind the contact. You avoid you by being super light or super responsive to yields or leg yields or pressure, and assuming, like, you create a horse that assumes and anticipates things before you ask them, because they're afraid. They're afraid. Afraid of either being overcorrected, punishment, or the fact that you are forcing them. Because if they don't comply, you're going to give them a lot of pressure. So in the end, you're not teaching the horse to think for himself. You're not teaching the horse to find the right answer. You're teaching the horse to comply, submit, and you're creating a mechanical conditioned response. A mechanical conditioned response. And that's what I refer to, especially in a lot of the natural horsemanship, liberty or lunging, where the horse is going around the person. There's no connection. The person just stands there. Oh, look at me. The horse is going around me. And I'm not even looking at the horse. But the horse is with me. They haven't left me, but they're going around me at a walk, trot, and canter. And they're like robots. You're supposed to be with your horse, in connection, in relationship, in the work. You're supposed to be having a conversation. That's the difference with my work. So basically, the whole idea of pressure and release, again, is to dominate your horse, create a submissive horse, a horse that complies, not a horse that learns, not a horse that tries to seek the answer. Now, when would I or do I use pressure and release? Number one, I will use pressure and release when I have to make a breakthrough with a horse. And what is a breakthrough? When I have mostly, predominantly, because I'm a trauma specialist and I've worked with so many restarts and rehabilitation cases, a breakthrough is when the horse is stuck in an old habit or an old perception of the way they're going to experience something. Even though you're presenting it new, they're so scared and trapped, triggered in memory that their round pen experience is going to be hell. They're just going to come in here and be run to death until they look at you and wave the little white flag and say, okay, 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 what do you want? And then you all are taught that means there's connection. So it's wrong. It's So I'm the one that comes in and undoes all of that. So in order to get the horse to let go of that old habit, that old memory, that old trigger, that old pattern, and to embrace the new that I'm trying to present to them, we have to go there. I have to go there with them. So I might have to apply pressure so that they are put in a position that triggers them so that I can help them work through it. But when they work through it with me and I'm with them the whole time, it's not about release. It's not about teaching anything. I'm just applying pressure because they're so afraid of pressure. They're so afraid of it in whatever form it is. Whatever form it is, whether it's the lunge whip, your hands coming up, you coming towards them. They're afraid of pressure. Pressure shows up all the time. It's the energy between us. It's our intention. It's our scientifically proven energetic frequency that we all carry. Every living thing carries energy. And so I'm gonna stay with them and apply that level of pressure until I can help them work through and connect with me. And at that level, the connection is literally going to show up as, oh my God, you're still here. Oh, I've tried everything for safety, but maybe it's you, Caroline. And I'm like, yes, it's me. I've been here the whole time. You can trust me. You can connect to me. You don't have to try to escape. Pressure's not an ugly thing anymore. Pressure's life. If it's done correctly, we all have pressure, but we must not fear it. We must not be scared of it. So it might look like I've released the pressure, but all I'm waiting for is the horse to look for the connection with me. But to the naked eye, the uneducated eye, it might look like, oh my God, Caroline stopped applying all that pressure. Really, I'm just waiting for the horse to figure out that I am their safety zone, number one. In that when they choose to look at me and be with me, connect with me, I can provide what they're looking for, which is always about safety. So there in of itself is release, right? On so many levels. But it's not your basic pressure and release that you're all taught. It's done very differently. And it has huge purpose and always about the horse and what's in the best interest of the horse. And in that particular case, it's all about triggers. And I can't teach a triggered horse, a worried horse, a defensive horse, anything if they don't feel safe. That's the first road to developing trust and confidence in that unconfident horse. Safety. So let's use a gentler example, not something about, rehabilitation or trauma. Let's use a young horse that comes to me to learn, that doesn't have a lot of baggage and is a fresh horse, a young horse. Sure, I'll use the basic concepts of pressure and release to help motivate the try, to help them think though. To think. So I have specific exercises that are, whether they're ground exercises or riding exercises, they're all specifically designed to be a container, a structure in which you and the horse, you can teach and the horse can learn. It's a very non-linear approach. And there is always more than one answer and more than one strategy to help the horse within this container. So if my container, which I'll show you in a little bit with Zor, is to teach him how to back up and away from me, that's one exercise. It has many steps, many building blocks. In that one exercise, that is what I call a container. That is what I call a structure, in which I can make or break his experience. I, as a teacher, can make or break that. And I don't want to break it, I want to make it. So it's all about him. and how well he learns. How he shows up in that process tells me everything I need to know as an experienced horse trainer, what I need to do next to help him learn better, to feel safe and confident, which in turn means he's going to trust me, just like it would for you. If you felt safe and confident around me, you're going to trust me. So I chose Zor today. Not only is he a schoolmaster, but he's also been with me through a lot of my YouTube videos. He was a young 4-year-old, very unconfident horse that was very dangerous when he first came to me, and dangerous because of his size, because of his strength and his unpredictability. The good thing with Zor is he was also very transparent. So he'd freeze, but then he'd go into flight very quickly. It's the horses that freeze and are really have a hard time coming out of that freeze, that just shut down. They're really difficult to read. And most of our horses shut down. They choose the freeze mode, which makes it really difficult for all of you because you can't read them. The more transparent they are, the more flighty they are, the more spooky they are, the more reactive they are, the easier it is to read. And the easier it is to fix. Honestly, it's just you guys aren't being taught about that because most of your horses are passive by nature. Horses as a species are passive by nature, as a species in general. They don't like confrontation. They're very non-linear thinkers. They're always looking for a way out or away from perceived danger or threat or anything that's uncomfortable. They want to get away from it. That's passive. And our job is when we are trying to create confident, trustworthy horses is to get them to a point where they're not afraid of the uncomfortable, right? Look how ass backwards it is with our training out there. I'm the one that gets all these damaged horses. 99% of them are horrible in the round pen, horrible on the lunge, tight and bracing and defensive under saddle, even though they look like they're in this beautiful frame, but there is no true collection. But predominantly, the groundwork has just been destroyed through this concept, principle, and tactic of pressure and release. You're destroying these horses. You're destroying the ability to develop the left brain to make them really excellent thinkers, somewhat problem solvers. Horses don't have the third hemisphere of their brain like we do. And our third hemisphere of our brain, the third layer, not hemisphere, excuse me, the third layer of our brain. So we're very similar in the first and second layers of our brain. But the third layer, which we possess and horses don't, is the ability to dream, create language, rationalize, analyze. That's all in the third brain. So I've studied all of this. That's what makes me a specialist in trauma and rehabilitation, is I understand how this all works. They don't possess that layer to their brain, but it doesn't mean that we can't develop them so that they can be the best problem solvers they could possibly be. So getting back to pressure and release, if I have a new horse and I want to teach them, and I'll use Zor as an example, even though he's not a new horse, he's also dominant and lazy, so he'll be perfect. He's not stubborn. Stubborn's very different than lazy and dominant. But Zor, I'm going to ask him in the middle, and if I'm going to teach him how to back up, I have building blocks. I have a whole method and curriculum to teaching this particular exercise of backing away from me, and I'm going to use pressure. And then I'm going to release the pressure with the combination of the reward to teach him that that was exactly what I wanted, and also to thank him for trying. And what happens is you create a horse that's naturally more dominant and lazy. You create the ability or the want for the horse, the motivation for the horse to please you. Because if you really know horses, you know, one, they're passive by nature, and two, relationship is the biggest motivation. Relationship is the biggest motivation. Relationship is what makes them feel emotionally secure. And like most of the propaganda out there, when they talk about the hierarchy of needs, like Dr. Miller and Pirelli, they say safety is number one for horses. Well, yes, in the wild it is. There's a lot to say about safety in large numbers and in a herd. But when we domesticate them and it's just us, this is the herd right now, or that's the herd, can you film that real quick? This is my life with my horses and my people. They love to be with us. This isn't a technique. They could go out in the 10 acres where there's a few of them out there behind my horse trailer. But they love the way this feels. So getting back to safety in numbers, yes, there is a lot to be said that is very true with wild horses, not your domesticated horses. It's emotional security and safety. And that's a whole nother topic I'm not going to get into. And then yes, comfort is number two, but it's not the way that these other natural horsemanship professionals talk about. It's not comfort through release, you guys. It's how comfortable they feel with you when they're in your presence. It's what you bring to that relationship that makes him feel safe and comfortable, bottom line. And that's why so many of you are being misled, and so many of your horses how do I want to put it, are being misunderstood and not turning out the way you guys think it should turn out. So come on, Biggs. Let's show them some healthy applications of pressure. Here's pressure right here, and release. Where's the release? In my smile. In my smile. And my reward is my relationship with him. Yeah, that's comfort more than anything. Ugh, comfort. And yes, I want my horses rubbing on me, hugging me, and in my space. It's how they show up in my space. I've never been run over. In over 2,000 horses I've worked with, from young to older to restarts to trauma, I've never been run over, because I will show you. I have specific exercises to create trust and respect. But I know my boy, and I know when he comes in my space like that, he is being loving. And that's the language of Equus. That's how they are together. So, here's pressure. How light do I want to end up? I have the whip here if I need it. And it would just come up rhythmically to back him up. And maybe make contact. Thank you. There's my release, but there's my comfort too. Thank you. I love you. I love you. I'm gonna back him up some more. Nope, I didn't ask you to go anywhere. Thank you for offering, but it's the wrong direction too. Good boy. So there's some pressure, if done correctly. He's not offended. He's not worried. He's not panicking. He's confident. He's relaxed. He's half asleep, but he's responsive. Wow! He responded beautifully. All right, we're going to go to the left. There's pressure. And I just want to walk right now. Good boy. Here's our walk. Add pressure with you first, just the way you would ride. It's the way I teach riding. The whip is just here to guide the body. It's very constant and quiet, and I can use it rhythmically to push him over. Good boy, and push him forward. Come. Now I'm going to ask for the trot. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There's pressure. It was done gradually, systematically, and I increased it. No big deal. He's not offended. He's not bothered. He's lazy. Little sass. No big deal. Take it away. And there's our walk. Whole time he feels good. He feels comfortable because I love him and he knows that. Pressure. There we go. Very nice. I didn't have to use the whip that time, did I? Good boy, and take it away. There's your release. And what's he coming into? A lot of love. So it's how you apply pressure. You can use it to help teach, absolutely. You can always use it to help get the response that you want. But it's how you use it and how you show up and how the horse shows up that's most important. I don't always want to have to come on that strong, especially with a lazy horse. I don't always want to use my whip. I don't want to be screaming at my horse the whole time. So what's the purpose of your pressure and your release? Not to mention, as I just spoke earlier, I want to develop his left brain. I want to develop him into a thinking partner, a partner that also has a voice, and I listen to his voice, a consensual partnership eventually, where I trust some of the decisions that he decides to make, believe it or not. It's really amazing, especially when you need your horses to help you do the work. And the work might be running a cattle farm or a ranch. They'll let you, trail riding, they can start making decisions on what's the safest route, how to protect you. All my horses are very protective, very protective. But you've got to develop that. You've got to earn that. No one's teaching you to earn it. So how does pressure and release show up, and what does it really mean? And no different than when I'm riding. Teaching a young horse or getting him back into shape, and I'm like, come on, my seat said let's go. I don't want to be kicking you to go. My seat said let's go. My focus showed you where I want to go. 1, 2, 3. I might use a little riding crop just to tap him. Let's go. But I'm not going to keep over facing him and constantly being on him to go, to go, to go. That's what they did. And so when he came to me at the age of 4, he was broken down. You couldn't get him to go. And when he finally did, he'd suck up his bottom lip, called a parrot lip, like this. He was so stressed out, and he'd stumble because he was frozen from fear and trip and fall on his knees. So I had to work through all of that, help him make the breakthrough to become a confident learner so I could show him a different way. And some of those videos when he was 4 are on YouTube. So that's all I have to say about pressure and release, what it means to me, what it means to the horse, how most of it taught still today is wrong, even when it hides behind the hides behind natural horsemanship. It's not nice. So next time you're adding pressure to help motivate your horse to try, to learn, to do something, how are you doing it? Is what matters. How are you doing it? And what is the desired outcome that you are searching for and looking for? Really be clear about that. How do you want that to show up? Thank you. I look forward to your comments. May you always be one with your horse.